Fred. You make me smile, my friend.
All right, do my best.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We are in San Francisco. It's like our annual time to meet up. We don't have much time in between to connect. But I cherish these moments to see you here, for sure. And you've been busy.
Super busy.
You've been busy.
That's the other part of it, right?
That's right. Everybody's busy, I think, which hopefully is a good sign. So, obviously, I know who you are, but the audience may not. You've been a part of a lot of things, but go ahead and give the folks a view of who Fred is, and then we'll go discuss.
Currently, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Detecteam. Things that you measure in the past. Spent a lot of time building the enterprise security environment at Splunk. Been a CISO a few times. Released a security operations product at Devo. Spent a lot of time doing security research around the boundaries of where those converge between Red Team and Blue Team. Founded the Red Team Offensive Village in DEF CON. Really tied to the community. Love the problem, love the mission.
Yep. Yeah. The community loves you too. You do so much. Sebastien?
Yeah, I'm co-founder and CTO of Detecteam, and met Fred at Splunk in those old days, and then we worked together at Devo, and we've been in touch for quite some time. And I'm a code problem solver. I always believe we can solve problems with code, right?
Technology is there to help us for sure. And both of you have been at the forefront of a lot of the innovations in incident management and response and data management for security and security analytics and you name it, right? And what are you up to now? What's Detecteam all about?
We, in that process, right, and we've probably committed a lot of the sins we're trying to atone for now. In that process, we spend a lot of time with customers in the various fights, having a discussion about how do we understand if any of the content we make actually matters. Do any of these detections work? Does any of this stuff that we sell to people and any of the roles we've been in make any difference? Does it buy down risk in any way, shape, or form? So we spent a bunch of time with the 16th Air Force helping cyber weapons operators understand how to find adversaries and ways to train like you fight. And from that was born this cool thing that we worked on that has grown steadily over the years to really be something we think is impactful and innovative for the market, because it moves the market from being static, rules-based, expert-driven detection, detections written sort of in spreadsheets, to this autonomous, continuous detection, generation, and validation that changes the game from a daily conversation now to what's historically been known as a monthly sort of attribution problem of getting high quality detections into production with experts that are basically endangered species and processes that are spreadsheets and notes on the wall, if you will.
Right. So what I'm hearing is we've created a bunch of tech debt.
Yeah, we've got a lot of red in our ledger we're trying to wipe out, to steal a little turn a phrase from Marvel.
There you go. So I had a chat with Allie Mellon from Forrester. She did a blog, and I think they did some research around it as well, around the number of incidents. Is a low number good? Is a high number good? Are there too many? Are there too little? How do you arrive at that number? What are you seeing, not seeing? How does what's in the incident help you do something about what's happening? How much context is there? So I'd like your thoughts on kind of that big picture of the state of incidents and the detection alerts and all that stuff that we do.
So we're rounding the corner on optimizing a broken problem here. There are metrics that illustrate various capabilities looking backwards to say, yep, these particular types of techniques or tactics were utilized by this adversary that compromised this environment. And we're pretty fond of saying security is really not retroactive, but the challenge is that that's what the industry has built. And that's also what people understand how to measure. So when we talk about mean time to detect or dwell time or mean time to respond, those are thrilling from the standpoint of looking at the operational capability of a team, but it has very little to do with whether or not you're prepared for an adversary.
Right.
So the other parts of that, right, even if you walk down the show floor, there's a lot of really great ways now to look at mitigating false positives. Awesome. Well, how do you make a better true positive? How do you get quality, accuracy, coverage of actual threat behavior into the conversation?
That's where you come in.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at organizations today, they all have teams and security tools, and yet they are being breached by the latest things that happen. And the reason for that is most of the detections in place are about IOCs, a hash, a file name, and very little to do with behavior.
And the traversal of the network and all that stuff.
All of it. So you end up looking for a hash or a file name. I mean, all right, sure, I can rename PowerShell to whatever, and it would bypass most of the detections today.
There's a real challenge, and also that there's a massive amount of detections in the universe today, and no one knows whether they're good or bad. So when you don't have a team of 20 lions, right, you go get a couple of folks that go get everything they can get their hands on, from open source to the vendor's detections, and you hit the I believe button and wait and see what happens, right? You pinned your risk to somebody that doesn't understand your environment, hasn't been fighting adversaries for a long time, right, which is that expertise component, and really doesn't know how your network works or breathes. It's an organism like everything else and doesn't account for drift. So if vendors that write detections or service providers write detections and they write those once a year, what does an engineering team do? That's their trade craft. So, where we look at this and go, there's a more interesting story to tell about what matters the time. So imagine that instead of being concerned about sort of post-exploitation activity and my team's ability to respond, my tools, and the tool chain, I'm really primarily focused on how do I meet with symmetry the adversary's behavior on an ongoing basis? How do I account for the drift in my network? Well, we believe you do that by generating new detections based on all of the context of your environment as regularly as possible, based on all the emerging threats and the historical context you have. So don't fight the problem of figuring out how to minimize, your alert triage problem. Make better detections that generate better alerts and stand by the quality.
So I hate to use this, but I'm hearing shift left on incident response.
Yeah. Sure.
To where you don't wait for necessarily the full picture, and then try to figure out tracing back to the root and blocking it and then recovering and getting everything back together. I'm hearing look for some indicators, whatever they are, and then shore up the rest of the detections.
Yeah, so
to eliminate or block lateral movement or other.
That's it. Yes. So there's this notion of
instead of waiting for it to happen.
Exactly. And even if, right? So shift left even can happen after something's happened, right?
Sure.
So the breakout time, if you asked or read CrowdStrike threat report, would be 49 minutes, right? 5 years ago it was 9 hours, so it means nuts. But 49 minutes, and that's between a compromised environment, a host, right, and lateral movement and expansion there. So staging and all the other things that happen.
Right.
So imagine that you've got 49 minutes from the first thing that you see. Okay, so if we measure that in time, and we say, and this is even without the proactive shift left magics, right? We would say, cool, so if I understand the implication of that, I can build and test and validate and deploy detections that cover that environment in 15 minutes. I've beaten the breakout time. So when we talk about preventive controls, right, and that's awesome, but it's a combination. The future isn't like static preventive controls, static detection, static anything. It's autonomous behavior. And so in our case, let's move a little further left and say, we don't need all the IOCs. That's okay. it's relative and it's valuable when they get there and they're accurate and they're pretty prone to false positives. It's how's the behavior work? It's the way that we build scenarios.
Behavior of
So, for example,
users, machines, apps.
all the above,
All the above. Okay.
and the adversary. So, if you said,
Right.
somebody is attacking a certain set of things, and okay, we've got some finished national intelligence. I know exactly what to do. That will quickly translate that in a scenario, generate a bunch of data, generate a bunch of text. It's no problem. That's easy, right? 15 minutes, done. If we look at things like there's emerging threats where there's not a lot of that information, but you know what? You have some ideas. This behavior, these tactics, you can cover all of those things proactively before you worry about whether or not this specific thing matters. And if you talk to folks that spend time in this fight, even the same adversary in 5 or 6 different campaigns uses different tactics. So imagine
You
a
have to
world.
purpose build.
Imagine a world where you can assemble all those blocks and say, we'll cover all those tactics for you. This is what this adversary might use. And you test for all the things.
Yep.
So instead of trying to get the one thing right where you get a positive detection for this one thing when it possibly hits, let's go see what the entire ecosystem does when we give you all the things and refine, close the loop, test, validate, and implement. Again, this is like minutes, hours to weeks and months.
Now, is this, I might get this wrong, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Like implementing a program on MITRE on steroids.
So when we think about this, it's probably, you can think about this in a simple set of terms, right? Let me apply all the detection expertise to GitHub plus a content sharing construct like Spotify. Right. So if we were making a mixtape, right, we would be on the mixtape, right, as this.
Right. Community driven,
Community driven.
engineering driven,
Absolutely.
research driven, all the above.
Practitioners.
What's that?
This is our DNA right there.
Yeah, exactly. So, so where are you with that? What have you built? What do you have in pilot? What do you have running? What are you seeing?
So we have a fully fledged project with customers, and this exciting partnership we have with Devo has opened up the floodgates, which has been super exciting for us. And the parts that we're also excited about is seeing so many different types of detection problem spaces and environments. Just continues to build an an understanding of the benefit. And primarily what's been exciting is we haven't talked to anybody who's like, that's a bad idea. We don't need that. So if you looked at a target mass, we'd say, well, 100% on target, right? With the folks we've talked to. And RSA has been cool to validate that.
Yeah.
And also hear other things, the way that people are dealing with. I thought, you always think, and being a former CISO or whatever, you have your own way of doing stuff. But when you start hearing some of the other ways people talk about what they're doing, it's mystifying to me how those folks can basically stand up and talk about risk, and it's what they're forced to do. So we love the idea of just raising the bar here and making this much more approachable, not just for the let's call it the wealthy class of high talented, high caliber engineers. Those guys don't need a lot of help,
Right.
but everyone else does.
So how and where does this fit in? So you have your detection, you have your threat hunters, you have your SOC, you have your SIM, you have your AppSec stuff.
Yeah.
So where do you fit into this picture? Who's sitting in front of what? Who's validating what in the environment?
So a lot of it is automatic with the platform, and this is why we break down detection as a process. Because when you look at how detection engineers would build their detection, they have data, they write their search, whatever the SIEM they're operating, XDR platform. And then from that, they try to find out if it's working or not based on the feedback they're having. But there is no way today, as a Detecteam, to create the data footprint an attack is making so the detection can then be tailored exactly to that need. So not only you have the correct detection as a result from those behaviors, but also you have the way to continuously validate that those detections are working
Right.
over time.
So when you look
Proof
at an org,
positive.
yeah, so when you look at an org,
Not false positive.
you got that is the thing, right?
Yeah.
When you look at an org, they've got a CTI team, this threat intel, you got a red team, you got security engineers, you got SOC analysts, right? Typical, set of components here. And somehow you got to operationalize intelligence, right? So you got to take this team and, I know the requirements. I'm a people person, right? You got to take the requirements over here, a sticks object or something, and some way to share it, and then a detection engineer's got to decide how do I decipher the hieroglyphs and turn that into something that has the language of the SIM or whatever the thing is.
Yeah. In 49 minutes.
In 49 minutes, right? Or less,
If
or
you're
your
lucky.
pizza's free.
You're lucky.
And and the biggest challenge they have then is like, okay, I need to operationalize that for a SOC engineer. Then we get into all of the other metrics, right? SOC engineering is measured, right? But not all the other pieces. So as an analyst responds to, a less than credible alert, right? We've hyper-focused on that, right? Everybody talks about the cyber burnouts. For me, it's a culture problem higher up the food chain. I think cyber burnout, cool, right? For SOC analysts, that's a real problem, but that's not the real problem, right? Because we're forcing people to deal with things that we can machine problem space solve well before that. So this ties those pieces together.
I love it. So I'm going to ask this question. I ask it often on my podcast of CISOs and security leaders, where I have a dream that security, people hear this all the time, I have a dream that security has so much information, perhaps now even more, presented in a different way with additional context. But I think we have the information to not just take an existing environment and be better at prevention, detection, and response, but also here's what the environment looks like, and here's where the exposure is. And to your point on burnout, if we can change these 1, 2, or 3 things, you're going to save your team's mind, right? Because you're not going to be fighting as many issues. And the example I give is probably a lame one, but if you don't use this tech, you're going to knock out 100 patches a month, right? And that team's not going to be worried about patches, and oh, by the way, they're not going to be worried about the false positives and the detections that come with all that too. Just because you fixed this one app or this one system or this one protocol or whatever it is. So your thoughts on that, and more pointedly to the information you're providing to give this that extra boost to achieve that.
So we think there's a really positive correlation from testing and validation to understanding what risk actually is, right? And historically, everybody's, 100,000 vulnerabilities. How many of those are going to kill you, right? How many of those do you not have preventive controls for? How many of those do you not have an understanding from a detection perspective as a detection mission? Okay, well, those are the things to focus on. And then higher order bit. What's the actual business problem here that we're solving? Your business risk is what, and how your application flows work? The tools that are available today, let alone the tools that are going to be available in 6 months, can help you really fine-grain focus down to that nuance, what is nuance of a very difficult problem to solve, and get coverage all around it, regardless of whether or not you can defend it. And I think that is a very new set of behavior and capabilities. We're using that today. We'll be using an awful lot more of that as we continue to refine it.
Yep.
And what becomes powerful there is you don't have to go back to the source tree to remedy a vulnerability in that particular case. Solve this in a number of other ways that can make that preventive control active, faster. So there's a world very close to us that allows a fleet of folks to be able to make decisions, agents sitting next to analysts doing the work, that allows us to use a sort of a swarm approach to all of these problem spaces in a much faster time to mention. So that's
Even proactive. You want to know ahead of time.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
everybody dreams about that, but when you have the attack data as we have, you just be proactive and find out, all right, how much work do we need to do here? Or you wait until that thing hits you, but we know what that is. We know the belief in that. So.
Well, I love this space. I spent many years in it myself.
Indeed, you did.
We did together.
That's right, together.
But yeah, I'm super excited for you and your customers as they take this on and get ahead of that curve and think differently about how we approach detection and response. I'm excited, and you know what else I'm excited for? The webinar we have lined up.
That's right.
We're going to get into some of the nitty gritty, and we're going to talk some more use cases, and we're going to have some fun on that.
That's right. Details not hyperbole. Yeah.
So,
yeah, excited.
Yep.
Always love it. All the way back to the days when, when we were doing this at a vendor in specific.
The big yellow one, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. The good old days that have left us with a bunch of tech debt that it's time to get out from under.
That's
or
right.
above and be behind it. So I'm super happy for you guys. Thanks for taking the time to share with us here at RSAC Conference. And stay tuned for our webinar. Connect with Fred and Sebastien, Detecteam.com, I think it is. .com?
Got it.
All right, there we go. And itspmagazine.com/directory/Detecteam. We'll find the webinar that we have scheduled. So please do register for that, and we'll sign up. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for having us.
The dog agrees.
Peace.